Hey, welcome back to God's Glory and Men's Real Stories. I am your host, Robert Moore III, and I'm excited that you would join us today for another great episode. Hey, if you're new to this community, I want you to know that you matter here and your story matters, no matter what chapter you're in. So today, I want you to sit back with a community that cares about you in hopes that you feel God's love as well as see God's glory in men's real stories. So my special guest today is a brother who, after a conversation we had where we were discussing the stories and the testimonies on my podcast, there was something that I said that resonated with him so much that here we are. And I'm ready to jump right in to give him all the time to talk about what that was and where that will take our conversation today. So I want to welcome my brother, Vernel Braud Jr. to the episode. What's going on, bro?
Not much, man. Don't worry. Just V,
V, okay.
My friends call me V. You're a friend, man.
Yeah, so, awesome, V.
Man, I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, no, it's been I wish I could tell people that, like, man, if y'all had seen the conversation we had up to this, man, it was powerful. Like, there was a moment where I was like, you are something else, God. Like, you show me that even in the pre-conversations, you're already up to something. And you literally, what we were just talking about, I was just reading that in the Bible today. And I'm like, yo, that's crazy. Okay. Yeah. So I was like, I don't know where this conversation is going to go, but I'm already excited about it. So I'm going to let you jump in and just introduce yourself to my audience.
All right. So I'm Vernel Braud. I am from New Orleans. I've been in Charlotte about 11 years now. I'm a son, I'm a father, I'm a singer, I'm an author, and I'm a student.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what is, I have to ask, what is it like carrying all those titles? What is it like trying to make sure that you are living up to each title in your life, knowing how important each one is?
Well, at one point it was about, I was really trying to keep up with the rat race. I just felt like at this point in my life I should be further along. But then I started chasing jobs, chasing career.
Yeah.
Measuring myself against everybody I graduated with or seeing people. And so that got exhausting. And so what I've learned lately is to be teachable.
Mm-hmm.
And so being a student, not just in scholastic things, academic things, but just being a student, being moldable and teachable, that's what I reference to, because I've learned a lot. I treat life like a classroom.
Right.
And one thing I don't do, and I've learned not to do, is go through the same situations, answering the test the same.
That's a whole word right there. Man, listen, that's a whole word right there. Oh,
yeah, because, man, I'm telling you, we can get faced with the same test over and over and be adamant it's A, B, C, G, E, E. And I'm like.
And you got graded on that test before, so you know it's wrong. But what do?
You're stubborn. I know it's this. And so, man, I was like, okay, God, show me. That's when I got out of my way and let him have control, things got better. But I think a lot of us still have that children of Israel in us. Things get good. God brings us through some stuff. It gets good. And then we're like, I don't have to pray as much. I don't have to get up and be on my knees. I don't have to do this no more. And then when it comes back around and we bumped our head or ran into that wall, again, that same wall, we're like, okay, God, I need you.
Oh God, it's like we're running back. Okay, so I'm so glad you said the children of Israel thing, because it's crazy how that's one of my biggest prayers. God, don't help me not be as stubborn. More importantly, help me not forget about what you just did yesterday, last week, last month, to where I think I can do this without you.
I'm talking to my son about pride. And sometimes we get the wrong interpretation of pride. Most of the times when we hear somebody talk about pride, they say, what? It's full of pride. It has an arrogant tone to it. But pride is also a subtle thing where you think that you start to isolate. I don't need to do this as much. I don't need help. I don't need to talk to anybody about that. That false humility is also pride.
Yeah.
I can do it by myself. I don't need to include anybody. That's a form of pride. And that's where Satan traps you in that isolation. And then you're left to your own voice. What he's clever at is disguising his voice. Your voice is his.
Yes.
Or vice versa, what I was trying to say. He will make himself sound like you, be in your head, saying this, and then you're thinking, "Oh, it's my conscience." No, it's not your conscience.
Or he'll give you something, and he'll let you pass it off as your idea. I don't have to take credit for it. No, I want it to be your idea.
Yeah.
That way, when you do it, like you can't say, "Well, somebody else gave me that," or "Oh yeah, the enemy gave me that." No, I thought that up myself. And so it feels it is yours to own now, and so it's yours to die with.
So think about it. When Satan went to heaven, and he was walking around the courts of heaven, and he said, and things were going on in the regular day. And God looked up and said, "Satan, what are you doing here?" He said, "Well, I was just walking around this earth, and I noticed your servant Job." And God was like, "Okay, what?" And he did all that stuff. He had to ask permission to mess with Job, right? Now, the way Satan gets permission is by disguising himself as us, for us to open our mouths to give away the keys that Jesus gave us already. You know what I'm saying? So he doesn't have to go into the courts now because we have been given authority. We've been given the keys. And now his way of doing it is by subtly putting us in the sleeper to get us to open our mouths. You know what I'm saying? He convinces us that, Satan knows scripture. He knows life and death are in the power of the tongue. He
does. And he loves to use it in a way to where it makes us question what the actual scripture is, but he gives us enough of it to where we're like, yeah, that sounds about right. I mean, yeah, no, I think that's what he says. And you're sitting there like, I mean, I got it from the Bible.
And then he will spin it, and that's why Jesus said, "It is also written." When he came back.
Right.
He recognized that Satan was coming at him with the word. He was like, "Oh, so that's what we do? We doing that now?"
Right.
He's like, "It's also written.
Also
Thou shalt
written.
not tempt the Lord your God."
Right.
He's like, "Get out of here. I know. I wrote that."
Right. You're trying to use my words against me to be able to do it in a way to where you want me. That's wow.
Jesus looked at him like Denzel. "Oh, that's what we doing now."
So that's what we doing. Yeah. That's what we doing now.
So, I mean, that part right there is just how sneaky and subtle it is, because what would you do? If I came to you and put my hand on your shoulder, you wouldn't instantly flinch or react, unless it was a creepy way. But if I did, unless I just like put my, "Hey, what's up, bro?" I put my hand on your shoulder and be like, yeah. But Satan comes in subtly and putting his hand on his shoulder, disguising themselves friendly. Then you don't realize that hand went from the shoulder to on the arm, and now it's slowly wrapping around. And that's what we don't understand, is that he will slowly choke us out if we just sit there and be passive, But I'm learning, and what I'm learning now is just I don't have all the answers. And one of the things that I've been learning to do is to be moldable and be teachable. My son, God started to draw parallels in my relationship with my children and him. And I remember I was just like, I don't know what to do, God. I don't know what to do. And I had been going through so many things, and I was just crying out. And growing up, I'm going to start over. I grew up, I'm a PK.
Okay. All right.
I'm a pastor's
Shout out to all the pastor's kids.
And grew up in the Baptist church down in Louisiana. And there were so many things that we were taught. Don't ask God questions. Don't do this. Don't say that. You can't pray this way. It was so many legalistic rules. And the day I discovered God, I was in the bathroom taking a shower.
Okay, say that one more time, just for the people in the back who think that he's only at church. Say that one more time, real
The
quick.
day I discovered God, I was in the bathroom taking a shower, and I think I was singing a song. It was either by James Moore or Fred Hammond, one of them. One of them, I was just singing the song, and I didn't know what. I'm from in the Baptist church. The Holy Spirit was all that antics and shouting and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But something happened in that worship to where it hit me. And I knew it was God at that time. And I was like, I can't let my dad hear me do this. Because I didn't know what. Nobody told me about tongues. Nobody told me about anything, but it happened. And I didn't have any reference for it. So I was like, okay, what am I going to do with this? This hunger took over. And I didn't know how to express that. But I started to dig into the Bible and I said, God, I want to know this. I want to know it. And I started meeting other kids like me in school because I used to sing in the choir, and they had people that were hungry, and then we would just talk about things and it would open up. And then my mom was in college when I was young, and she would sing. She was a singer. And they would have all these Bible studies, and I would just listen, and it was just feeding me. And I wanted more. I wasn't getting it here at the Baptist church. I wanted to get what I was getting at school and all this other stuff. So I started traveling with my friends and experiencing God in different ways like that. But that when I started hearing as I traveled from adults, God has a calling on your life. Everywhere I went, strangers. It happened so much. I was like, hey, everybody say that,
Right.
I was young. I was too young. I didn't understand all that. And it wasn't until adulthood, when I was getting ready to leave and go on my own, when I said, I want that, God. Whatever you have, I want that. I'll answer it, Right after I said, I want to be what you called me to be, whatever it is, I'll do it. I lost my brother. My brother was murdered. He was already in some bad stuff, started gang banging in the city. And I remember him calling, and he said, it was like a Tuesday. He said, yeah, man, I want our dad to do my wedding. I'm getting out of this game. I want to be married. I want to do this and that. And then I think Wednesday or Thursday night, I get a call from our cousin, and he was like, man, X, Y, and Z. He said, your brother got killed. He got killed. He's in the hospital, but he got shot. That's what he said. And I was like, what do you mean? So I said, who is this? Stop playing on the phone. And he was like, no, man, it's me, Mark. So went down to the hospital. Me and my dad just flew. And we got to the hospital, and we go in, and he's in the first operating room. And as soon as we walk in, his head turns to the door, and he just flatlines right then and there. And that was the first time I ever seen my dad cry. I don't think I've seen him cry ever after that. And out in the parking lot was all these gangbangers. They had all the low riders. They had the Cutlasses. They had the Impalas and everything. And I walk outside. My cousin Mark ran up to me. He's like, man, I'm so glad to see you. I thought you died. I was like, Mark, it's me. I'm like, my brother's nickname was Dunny. I said, Dunny, he's dead. And he was like mad, man. So we went back to Mark's house. It was just bubbling over with anger and sorrow. And we sitting in the room. He trying to figure out what we gonna do, man. We gotta find out what to do. And he flicking through the TV, and he stops and put it on Boys in the Hood. Of all the movies that night came. I was like, so we watched this movie getting fired up. And he's like, let's go. I was like, where are we going? He said, we got to find something. We're going to go. And so parents barricaded the doors, couldn't let us out. But
wait, who? No, his parents.
Because we was at his house. Y'all ain't going nowhere. Because they saw that look. Shortly after that, we went to the funeral. It was like a gangster's funeral. Man, it was like a movie. And it was difficult because I never experienced that kind of loss. And I didn't know how to react to it, And so it hit me deep. And then after that, funeral scene and all that other stuff, I pretty much was ready to get out of New Orleans, so I moved so rapid. My mom was like, I wasn't ready.
Okay, so I'm curious though. So like in the midst of this, now this story of you having an experience with God in the shower, that happened before your brother died. So in the midst of all this, how did that experience, or how did you look at that experience, or your just how did you view God, and how did you move forward in the loss of your brother with that?
I became real silent. I think that's when I first had to deal with, I didn't know what depression was. Nobody was talking about depressions back then and all that stuff. And nobody talked about counseling. If you even mentioned counseling growing up in my household, it was looked at negatively. I don't need no counseling. Ain't nothing wrong with me,
Yeah.
And that was odd because you counsel people as a pastor,
But okay, yes. Matter of fact, I believe that the one of the positions of a pastor was to counsel his congregation in times of need, in times of sorrow,
even marital counseling,
right,
stuff like that.
But this is the crazy thing, though, that I realized, because that title was put on a lot of pastors. It's almost like it went hand in hand with the title pastor. Now, whether they were qualified or not, it didn't matter. But what I end up experiencing were the pastors in my life that were qualified to preach. They were qualified to console, but they weren't qualified to actually provide a perspective that you may receive from a counselor or therapist, actually, let me say it, a licensed therapist.
Yeah, that's good. Because a lot of them were out of their depth. They lacked the aptitude. They didn't want to, they only were, they modeled what they were taught.
Right.
And so.
That's good. That's a great way of putting it. Yes.
And that was what I've learned. I learned all my ideology about God was from that. God's gonna get you if you do this. He wasn't a compassionate, loving God. So when I say God started to draw, I started to draw parallels in my relationship with God with my children. It was that when I went through that, I moved away after graduation, went to Atlanta, didn't have any direction. And I went through some hardships out there and experiences that I thought I knew or whatever. And then I was looking for God, just looking. And I got in the military after that. And that's when God started to show himself. I was getting off the bus at boot camp. And this chief looked at me. He said, come right here, stand right here next to me. And I was like, okay. He was like, what's your last name? I was like, Bro. He said, how you spell that? I told him how to spell it. And he looked at it. He looked at my folder. And he was like, oh. He said, you're going where I was going to put you anyway. And I was like, he was like, you sing? I was like, yeah, I sing. He said, you sing? I was like, I can sing, yeah. So after he did all that, he said, I want you to follow me. He went and introduced me to the chaplain on the base at boot camp. He said, this is Bro. He's going to be here every Sunday leading worship.
Wow. Okay. So he found you immediately.
Yeah, and I was like, okay. And so the chaplain did that. So I led worship in boot camp. I also was part of the division where we performed. We had the choir, the band, and the drill team. So all I did was sing at everybody's graduation. Whatever the civilian director did, he made me sing. He had me leading songs. We had ensembles and everything, and we would sing. And I had an encounter in boot camp. We were singing for Christmas, and I said, God, this is what I want to do. You couldn't talk me out of not wanting to sing and worship. And it was just so many experiences in that where I was able to lose myself and just worship. And I was like, yeah, I felt at home. I felt at peace. After boot camp, got to my next duty station in Wichita Falls, Texas, little bitty base. The airport looked like Taco Bell. It was that small. And so we got there, and the chief, we had like a whole bunch of new recruits coming into this new duty station. We were all in our dress whites and everything, little Cracker Jack suit and everything. And we had our sea bags, threw the sea bag down, and the chief was like, welcome, introducing herself to everybody, all the people, seeing all the new people come off the bus and everything. And she said, young man, I need you to come here in my office. Everybody's like, man, he just got off the bus. He already in the chief office. And I'm like, Lord, what do I do? So she's in the office. She said, close the door. And I'm standing there at attention. She said, at ease. And she's playing Fred Hammond, Spirit of David CD. And the song Success is in My Hand. Follow my plan. Don't waver to the left. Don't waver to the right. That's the lyrics of the song. Mm-hmm. She said, you know that song? I said, I know that song. I said, I probably broke that CD or warped it. I played it so much. She said, I don't know you from anybody in here, but she said, I recognize the Spirit of God when I see it. And she said, devil is going to try to sift you. She told me that. She looked at me. She's like, Satan is going to try to sift you. It's going to be tough. You're going to go through some obstacles, but you have been called. God has marked you. And that, I heard that growing up. I heard that from a chief at boot camp, and I heard it from a chief at my new duty station. The events after that, pure hell. Pure hell. And I'm like, what's going on? And I fast forward to getting out of the military in 2005. I have a son by myself. I'm raising a son as a single dad. And I go back to Atlanta because that's where I moved to before I got in the Navy. So my cousin said, you coming to church? Invited me to church. I'm walking up the parking lot. She sees me turn around. And she's like, where you going? I was like, I don't feel good. And she's like, you all right? I was like, no, I don't feel good. She's like, you need some Imodium? I'm like, no, I don't need no Imodium. I just don't feel like being here. And so she's like, oh, but I have somebody that wants to talk to you, Minister Darcy. I'm like, who is that? It's my first time coming here. He just said, your cousin is coming here. I need to talk to him. I'm like, what you tell this dude about me? You talking about business? Because you don't talk about business, family business. And so I'm like, I get in there, and this dude, he about 6'3", big bald-headed, look like a linebacker, right? And he doing this. As soon as I walk in, I see him pouring oil in his hands. And he's like looking at me, and he said, I'm glad you came. He said, it was tough. And he said, but I wanted to tell you that wasn't your wife. And I'm like, looking around like, what are you talking about? Because I was married at the time and went through a divorce. And he said,
this is with your son?
This is my son, Gabriel, my oldest. And he said, that wasn't your wife. And I had this recurrent dream constantly. It was about this place. I dreamt about this big, super big place. It was like big, like a warehouse, like Sam's and Costco. But it was a place where all these people came in, and they will come in. It could be, I just got out of jail, or I'm a runaway, or I'm an abused victim, or I'm this, or whatever. They came here, and it was like a refuge for them. Mm-hmm. And I walked in, and the lady said, Dr. Braud. And I'm like, looking around. She said, I'll take your coat. And she said, are you looking for your wife? I'm like, yeah. She's over there in the reading center reading to the kids in story time. And I'm looking at this place. It's massive. And I see some writing on the wall. I couldn't make it out. I'm like, what is that? It was the motto. It was the vision of the place. And I woke up after that. And he told me that wasn't your wife. And he said some things to me like, you acknowledge this calling, and Satan is going to try to take you and make you change your mind about everything you're doing right now. Everything you're doing. And he spoke to me from a place of, I didn't share this stuff to him, and it was blowing my mind. He's like, you've experienced loss. Your brother, you're divorced. That wasn't your wife. He said, I saw. The Lord showed me. He said, but if you want to get to the things that he has for you, you're going to have to be pliable. You're going to have to be obedient. Because, we think about sifting I think about sifting like the old 49ers. They get the goal and they shake all the dirt loose. And,
Right.
But Sifting is pulling away, separating the stuff so you can get to the actual thing.
That's so true. Yeah. And it's good.
I got so distracted even after hearing that. What I've learned is that I've learned now, looking back at that, about fatherhood, about identity, about all that stuff. I came out of a 2-parent home, but it was like I was raised by just my mom, because I didn't have that fellowship with my dad. I didn't have a close relationship with my dad. My dad was closed off emotionally. Even after the death, he really went into seclusion. I don't know what that's, well, I know now, because I'll tell you about that. But I didn't know how to express myself. He became so angry and volatile, it shut me down, And so I limped through life. And when I was talking about God drew a parallel, my son came to me at the age of probably 16. And he was afraid to talk to me at times because I had gone through so much at that time. I was going through divorce, didn't know how to be alone because I didn't have a dad to teach me what love was and toleration was. I didn't know what acceptance and rejection. I had so many things that I needed to know, and I just learned through trial and error. And that became my motto of living, like just trying to figure it out.
Right.
And I drifted away from God. I was doing stuff that I thought was going to bring me happiness. I thought being in a relationship and making somebody else happy was how you made people happy.
Good Lord. Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
No.
And
yes.
so
yes. Story.
I was doing that, and I was just, this person makes me happy. Maybe this, and I ignored God. I ignored him. I got into another relationship, and
so hold on, let me make sure, because I'm pretty sure if I'm confused, and I want to make sure I'm asking these questions for my listeners. So now you said that you were going through a divorce when your son was 16.
No, I went through a divorce through a divorce before my son. I moved back to Georgia.
Right. Okay.
And
with
my
your son.
He was about 1.5.
Got it. Okay. So his mother's divorce.
His mother. That was my first wife.
Got it. Okay. I'm just making sure. Yeah, because the way you were describing.
Lord, everybody gonna be about business. Don't judge me.
No. That's the beauty. That's the beauty of sitting down here. There's no judgment at all. It's just that I was making sure I wasn't confused on this. So tell me this. And I'm just trying to go back and like cover some points here. What you experienced from your dad, and how you watched him handle his emotion, how you watched him process his feelings and what was going through his mind. It was very much like, as I used to describe it, it was like almost like emotional constipation.
Yeah,
there was nothing there. It was a blank.
My way of living, even if I was railing against it, I was trying to not to be like him so much. I was being like him.
Yeah, and I
didn't even know. I remember just being so emotionally immature and closed off. Mm-hmm. And one thing I could tell you right now, I had a talk with Gabe's mom at his graduation when he graduated basic training a couple of years ago. And she said, "You were a really good man." And she said, "Well, we were so immature. And when you would come back home from long duties and doing all that stuff," she was like, "We didn't know better." And she explained her point of view. And I was listening to her and I was like, I didn't realize I did that. Because I would come home and I would just be tired, or we would go walk or do something that she wanted to do, and I come back home and she said, "All I wanted you to do was just pay attention sometimes. Even after doing that, I just wanted to be around you because you were gone a lot."
Right.
And I wanted to get on PlayStation 1 at the time, and I wanted to do all the stuff that, that I wanted to do because I had no release. I didn't.
Okay, so, and as I hear you talking about this, you say you didn't have a release, but a lot of times when I talk to people who are like, okay, yeah, I used to do this and I used to do that, and it was because, okay, so what I hear, and I could be way off with this. A lot of times when we're around people who we would normally answer to, but we're not ready to face the answer, then we have to distract ourselves from sitting with them, because whether we sit with ourselves or we sit with somebody else, they're looking to understand, so how was it?
Yeah.
What happened? Can we talk about it? And if you're not ready to talk about it, then it's like, you know what? I'm going, it's not, I want to be around you, but I know I owe you something if I'm around you.
That's what I was doing.
Okay.
I didn't know anything about that type of intimacy.
Yes.
That.
I love how you just said that level of intimacy, because that is for so long I looked at intimacy as the sexual act that we perform, and didn't realize that intimacy, as Stephen Furtick says, it's allowing somebody to look into me.
Yes.
And if I'm not ready to look into me, then you definitely can't look into me.
And I was hiding a lot of pain. I was hiding a lot of rejection, a lot of things that happened. I mean, there were some things that happened in my childhood that I didn't even share with my mom until I was like in my mid-20s. And she was like, what? That happened to you? I was like, yeah. But I was like, I don't know if I blocked it out, but it came to me. I was driving and I started crying. And I was like, that really happened. That really happened as a child. And I didn't know, when a child gets abused sexually, it can happen two different ways for a man. He can go two different ways, become extra promiscuous, or he can become alternative, we like to say.
Right. Or just be to where there's some men that just don't want to be touched. They don't want to ever have another interaction or experience with anybody. They choose to push away or keep everybody at distance.
So that was going on. That happened before the death of my brother. A lot of stuff. And I didn't know. I remember crying and saying, God, I don't want to be here. I was probably 13, 14. I don't want to be here. I didn't know what depression was. I was just wishing not to be here. And when I started with Gabe's mom, and I started pushing away, she started finding other things to entertain her.
Yeah.
And she told me, she's like, I'm sorry, I should have just divorced you. I didn't know any. She's like, I did that because I didn't know any better. She came from a broken home. And that's one thing we got to stop fooling each other about in relationships. Nobody is whole and nobody is broken. You didn't fix me up. I didn't come into this and you were better. We all have fractures. We're all dealing with our issues.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Every last one of us. Yes.
We're not. I found this girl or I found this guy, and I always seem to be finding the ones that need help and broken, and I fix them up. No,
that's almost a mirror of what you're dealing with, and it looks familiar and it looks safe to you, and that's why so many people, guy or girl, choose people in their lives normally, because they're a mirror, or they produce safety in what I'm currently not dealing with.
You attract what you hide, and if you think you hiding it, but that gravitates to you.
There it is. Yeah.
And Pastor Stephen said something years ago. It's profound. He said, "You can't heal what you hide. You can't heal what you hide." So, since I opened that box up.
Yeah, let's jump in there.
Yeah. So I got that sexual abuse, right? That was embarrassment. Carried that shame my whole life. I remember, I think what triggered it and made it come back to the surface, I was watching that movie Antoine Fisher.
Oh.
And that,
why did I know you were going to say that?
And that hit me, and I was like, that really happened. That really happened. And I was crying. And I didn't know how to deal with that. So, like I have done in the past, I just swept it under the rug.
Yeah.
And I just moved on. And my son, I keep jumping around history and timelines, but he told me, he said, I just wish that you would learn to heal before you jumped into the next relationship. I know you were doing it for me. Okay,
so hold on. How did your son know that? How did he know to tell you that? Like that's some wisdom that comes from a man who's.
He said this before he got in the military. He was probably 19. And he said, "Dad, you are a good man." He said, "You're a good man." He said, I was saying this to you earlier. He said, "You were not just a dad to me. You were my best friend. I've learned everything I can be. Everything that I am, I learned from you." And it started to click when I moved out on my own. But he said, you didn't know how to heal. And I said, you know what, son? You're right. I didn't know how to be alone. I didn't know how to be alone because I thought my happiness was found in a person. I was substituting God for people.
Right.
And for relationship. And I was avoiding the one relationship that was going to bring me peace.
Yeah.
And so I have learned over the years. Now I'm sharing something with you because I'm in it. I've been married 3 times. I just went through my 3rd divorce, right? Recently. It's difficult because I thought it was this after all the learning and after all the sitting and praying and entering into a real relationship with God, I finally got it right. But it was still some fragments and some stuff that I didn't, unresolved things I didn't want to deal with. Both her and I. Mm-hmm. She had some stuff and I had some stuff. We didn't really. We went through counseling and all that stuff. We lost a daughter about 5 years ago.
Oh, wow.
Through medical malpractice. And that brought us together stronger than ever. And she would always say, you know, if it wasn't for Cruz, we would have been divorced a long time ago. But Cruz brought us back together. That was our daughter's name. And she was a good woman, you know, but we were so hurt from our past. We did almost the same thing. You know what you said earlier, right? Mm-hmm. You attract that. You don't know what you draw, that same type of hurt that you're hiding. And
the crazier part is that, to even take it a step further, a lot of times you think that that other person will help you deal with it in a manner of speaking, when honestly, the truth is, if you were honest with yourself, because when I became honest with myself, no, I just knew that these people would help me overlook that. I wouldn't have to focus on that. I'll stay so intrigued with you, so fascinated with you, so much, so trying to make you happy that I won't have to deal with that. And your happiness will make me happy.
That was my fault. And the thing is, what happened was trying to run away from it. Marriage always brings it to the surface.
Yeah.
Marriage will shake it from the bottom and sift it and bring it right up there for you to deal with it. And if you don't have spiritual maturity and vulnerability, to share that with a person, I was still hiding a lot of stuff, a lot of hurt. Mm-hmm. And that was things that I would explain to her and tell her, and then her hurt wouldn't allow her to receive it.
Oh man, you know what? You can't. Man, okay. So that was so heavy what you just said, and you know, I know. Okay, so I know I have a good audience base here. I have women and men that listen, and I think a lot of times, as men and women, we get married for a lot of different reasons, but a lot of times we get married because we feel like, especially as Christians, I have to get married before I can move forward with this person. Mm-hmm. I have to do what I have to do. This is only right, especially in communities where it's only acceptable to get married with to this person before you can move forward in a relationship with them. And so we do it without ever sitting with ourselves and sitting with God to understand how I can be the best person for me,
right,
before I can be the best person for them.
I read a book about that years ago. I don't know who the author is, but he said, be the person you would want to date. Yes. You would want to be married to. Be that person.
But hold on. So many people are that person, which is why they get with that person. Mm-hmm. And so as much as I used to hear that, I realized that we do choose the person that we want to date. We normally choose ourselves. They look familiar because in a lot of cases, they don't want to do the work. And neither are we. And so, because imagine this. Mm-hmm. Imagine if you were to get with a person and in y'all's first dating encounter, they talk about how, I'm going to therapy and I'm doing this and I'm doing this type of self-care and self-love and different things to take care of myself so I can deal with a lot of my past hurt. Now, they put all that out there right on the table. Yeah. Now, you know that getting with them is going to require you to have to do that same work. You already see it. And a lot of times, it's funny, I say this, that sometimes if a person tells you right off the bat, I'm in therapy, your first thought is, oh snap, this person is crazy. Like, wait a minute.
He's standing over me with a knife one day? No.
Because we have this stigma, this thought that only crazy people go to therapy. Instead of realizing that no, people who want to deal and better love themselves go to therapy. People who want to invest back into themselves. We can always talk about 401ks, investments, this, that. Nobody ever talks about the investment of pouring back into yourself. And it's not through finances of, if I put this in, then eventually when I retire, I'll have this. No, if I put this in, eventually by the time I'm retired, I'm going to be a wholer version of myself than I was then.
Thank you. Because I think we gotten out of looking at therapy as actual conditioning, helping. Because an athlete goes to therapy after everything. They go and get stuff worked out.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Physical therapy.
Physical therapy.
You don't have physical therapy is not just for injuries. It's also to keep your body at top peak performance, so you can work some things out. And mental therapy is designed to do the same thing.
Exactly.
It helps to keep you performing at top physical, mental condition. But
that was good. Hey, bro, by the way, hold on. That was good. I just look, it fully set there that, like, yes, you're right. Athletes will go to therapy, physical therapy, just to stretch, just to prepare themselves for the after game effects or the next game effects. Not because something's broken, not because they injured themselves. That was good. That was really good. Whoa, that was good.
It's just so I can prevent the next injury.
Yes.
Or the next thing that might become an injury. Wow. Man, I ran away from all those things, and I looked at it, and I was literally praying today. I was like, God, I don't want to come out and describe a story and talk about how this person hurt me or what I went through. And I said, and I was watching a sermon today earlier, and I was just like one instance that happened last month. I was reading about Job. And when Job prayed for the people, his friends sat around the fire. They came at him.
Ridiculed him. All that.
And when Job prayed for those people and he forgave them and released them, God restored him. And I was praying, and I've been going through so much turmoil out of this last relationship, and so much shame and slander, and I heard things that I wasn't supposed to hear. I got Ring camera on a porch and all that stuff, and I heard conversations I wasn't supposed to hear, and I was like paralyzed. And I remember last month I was praying, and God said, forgive him, release him, bless him. Bless them to curse you. And I had to come from a point where it wasn't like, God, I'm not praying this prayer for my peace, but that's still your daughter. Mm-hmm. That's still your daughter.
Yeah.
And what I'm going to do is ask for forgiveness for how I treated your daughter, for not owning up to myself, because I had learned to hide my pain, but if something triggered me, I learned how to be very cold.
Yeah.
I learned how to be very, very cold and hurtful. And I said, forgive me. And today I was like, I'm thinking back 3 times. Like, there were things that I could have done better, communicated better, shared, or even opened up to do something different. And I didn't. And I said, I ask your forgiveness for that, God, for how I govern myself in that. And I repent of that.
Wow.
And I'm asking that you heal them from the pain I caused. Bless them. Draw them back to you,
I can't help. Okay, so I'm going back to a moment in your story that you told me about when you went to that second base when you were in the military in, I think it was Texas.
Yeah.
Small base. Mm-hmm. And drill sergeant brought you to the office and said that you would be shifted, right? Mm-hmm. She didn't give you a time frame on that. She didn't tell you how long that was going to last.
Man, and that's the thing, from the person in Texas to leaving, getting out of the Navy, going through all that crazy stuff, and then getting into Atlanta, it was some really crazy stuff. But all that stuff kept happening. And every time, I mean, my mom came to Virginia when I first went through the separation, right? And my friend, we used to sing, and we were singing, and he invited me to church. And he said, I need you to come to my church, man. He said, it's going to be awesome. And I get to the church, and the pastor preaching, the choir singing, and I'm sitting there. I'm sitting like midway in the middle of the church and on the aisle seat. And the pastor preaching, and he came down the aisle, and he just preaching. I can't remember what he was saying. This man stopped. Walked down, he was preaching from the pulpit, walked down the aisle, came back, and he put his hand on my shoulder. I'm looking up, I'm like, he said, I don't know how you're sitting here after what you've been through. And I was like, and I looked at my friend in the choir stand, and he was like, wasn't me. And this man said, yeah, you don't even understand what's going on. This is not the life of a called person. This is not what you thought that being called, it was going to be roses. You thought it was going to be easy life. You thought you'd be walking into what God has prepared you for right now. I'm looking at this dude like, who is this dude? I never met him.
It's so crazy how the more you describe your story, it's crazy how God continued to speak to you through so many people. He let you know what you were going to experience. He spoke to you through so many people, whether it be to let you know where you were at, to encourage you, to prepare you. And it's funny how so many people, sometimes we're looking at things and we're waiting for God to speak to us from heaven. We're waiting for him to just start writing on
the change for you.
Yeah. But he's consistently talking through others to let you know that, like, hey, look, prepare yourself.
Yeah.
We're about to go through a storm. Hey, prepare yourself or understand what you've been through should have already taken you out.
Yeah.
What you're going. Man. Yeah. And it's crazy how a lot of it's crazy how a lot of times we don't recognize it. We get, as you said, we get used to people telling us there's a calling on our life. Mm-hmm. There's a calling on your life. That never changed. But the problem is that never changed. The only thing that changed is your circumstances that tried to steal the calling from you.
My decision making too. That's why I was talking about how important it was for me. Now that I look back at things for mentorship, I sought out mentorship when I got here. And after going through some stuff before the divorce, I look at things, we had more good times than bad times, but our brokenness wasn't being addressed with each other. Mm-hmm. We shared. I didn't start to learn a lot of stuff about her until after we've gone through some things. We went through that grief counseling, and we started to literally synchronize and talk. Mm-hmm. Pastor Stephen came to my house during that time, and it was during Love Week. And I didn't know. We were sitting in the house just chilling, and he literally walked in. And it was him and a couple of campus pastors and his wife. And he was like, I'm gonna let them go over there and talk to your wife. We're gonna come over here and talk. And he was like, man, how you doing? And I was like, I'm all right. He said, I see all the gaming systems here. I see music and all that stuff. What do you do to shift your focus? I said, usually music. I said, music is my release. He said, mine too. I would write, I would play. And he said, when my dad passed away with, what was it? It was
ALS, yeah.
He said, I lost myself in music and doing that. But he said, don't let anybody rush you to tell you when you're supposed to be healed or to put a bandage on something. He kept on referring to like a wound. He says, what we tend to do is when we're hurt, we're quick to throw something over it. Mm-hmm. But he said, sometimes you got to leave some stuff uncovered for a long time to heal. Mm-hmm. And I was like,
okay, so let me even build upon that. Let me build on that right there, because that was great advice.
I looked at him like
that was so, because the truth is that he's right. And in most cases, most of us have wounds, but the problem is that we jump into situations, we jump into certain things, and we bleed over all over everybody. We're literally sitting there with a wound that needs to be nursed, that needs to be addressed, but yet we would rather cover it up with a relationship. We'd rather cover it up with a title.
I did that.
We'd rather cover it up with so many different things instead of saying, you know what? I need to address this wound. And the truth of the matter is addressing this wound is by sitting here and addressing the wound, not running to a game, not running to a relationship. And because all we do is we bleed over all that stuff. You know I did it.
I cover up. If you look at, I could pull up, I don't have the social media pages I used to have, but I still have the pictures. We used to get hashtag goals sent to us. Yo, you guys are the epitome of couple relationship. You got businesses. You got this. You're so charismatic. You this, you that. But inside, we were so hurt from our past. And she did work. She did some work before she met me. But what marriage is also designed to do is to bring out these things so that you can work together. And it exposes some areas that you left covered. It's supposed to expose these things. It's supposed to rub together and let you come together and find a new level of intimacy and vulnerability to build off of. I keep going back to parallels. The day I started listening to my son, he would talk, because I would always try to get into father mode, talk to him. He would be like, Dad, I need to talk to you about something. I'll be like, yeah, you got to do this, that. The day I sat and listened, it was after we lost our daughter, a little bit before that. He was talking to me, and he never used to express himself to me. I never expressed myself to my dad because my dad was volatile. He was grumpy, And so I was like, I don't want him to come at me like that. So I, in turn, made it hard for my son to talk to me. And he came to me and wanted to talk to me about some stuff he had been experiencing. And I finally sat still and was quiet. And he just started pouring out. And then he was like, are you listening to me? I was like, I'm listening. He was like, I need you to say something now, Dad. I really need to know what to do. I need your advice. And that changed me because I didn't have a model. I didn't have a reference point. And God started to draw parallels. I kept trying to get back to that. He started showing me my relationship with my kids and the type of father that they were requiring. And then he showed me the type of father he was. One movie that touched me the most after losing a child, was the movie The Shack. That man lost his daughter in a tragic way. But in that movie, God appeared to him in a way that he can understand and accept. He went through abuse as a child, physical abuse. And the neighbor was kind to him, talked to him, baked him pies, consoled him. When he went into that, when he met God in the woods, he appeared as that person, a motherly figure. Jesus always appeared as Jesus. He was this guy who palled around with him, hung out, ran and talked with him. The Holy Spirit showed up as this gentle person that was really quiet and great listener. But that showed me that we box God up so much. And because of my upbringing and not knowing the relationship with God, not knowing God for who he is, I was taught that God, if you don't do this, it was a transactional relationship we were taught in the Baptist church.
Right. What you do for him, he turns around and he'll do it back for you. If you don't do that,
he's going to get you. And so that movie changed my perspective, and also the death of my daughter shifted something. My life pivoted. Different. It was like, my mentor, Philip, best friend, he said, we're going on a fishing trip. He has a friend that has a fishing boat. We're going to go out to the ocean and fish. He's like, you're coming. I didn't have a choice. So we drove overnight, went to an Airbnb, woke up the next morning, got and drove to the pier. On our way there, he was like, how you doing? What's going on? Talk to me. And he was like, I just want to know what your process is. And I was like, how is this going to work out for my good? Where's the good in losing my daughter? Where's the good? I still had so many questions. And I thought about all the stuff. I started just seeing, Satan has a real good way of disguising himself and talking to you and tearing you down from the inside out, telling you you're not this. All my faults, all my past, in that one moment, just started picking away at me. He was at me.
Well, and I'll even add, he has a good way of tearing you down. The question is what do you do with what he's saying? Because once you start to believe it and then agree with it and then repeat it, he no longer needs to stay here.
No, you don't.
He's passed the keys over to you, and he'll let you continue to run that into the ground.
And I was doing that. So I asked those questions. We went. He talked about it, and I didn't. He's like, just let me sit. And he was just. He's a good listener, and he said, "We'll get to that. Gotta come up with. Gotta introduce what he'll talk. He'll let us know." So we go out on a fishing trip. Had a great time. Caught some really big fish. Had some great experiences. On the way back, the guy was like, "Yo, when y'all go back to the city, as you pass, you're gonna pass this little place on the right-hand side of the road. Make the best catfish sandwich. Just stop there and get it." We stopped there, and we ordered from the window. He said, "You want to get something to drink? Walk inside. Go get something to drink." I see a guy walking in with the dolly with some drinks. He's restocking everything, and there's some people sitting at the table in the restaurant part, and we're looking in the kitchen and waiting on our order, and the lady's like, "How you guys doing? Where you coming from?" I said, "We just went on a fishing trip," and he was explaining everything we were doing, and they said, "What do you do? Where you come from?" And he was just talking. I'm sitting there like listening, and they said, well, they asked what church we were going to. He told them that, he said, we go to church, we love this and that. And they said, well, we just lost our pastor, and we're a flock without a shepherd. And they were really, you could see the grief on their face. And they said, would you mind praying for us? And so he started praying for him. And she was like, after he prayed, she said, "I'm the owner of this place." And she said, call up to the kitchen. She said, "Those sandwiches y'all make, throw some scrambled eggs on the catfish and put cheese on it." I ain't never had a catfish sandwich. It was scrambled egg and cheese, and it was good. And give him this, give him that. And so I'm sitting there listening to him praying and encouraging them there and everything. And I was just like, good prayer, good conversation. I was ready to leave. And she said, "Young man, you don't have anything to say?" I'm like, "I think he covered it all." And he looks at me like, and I said, "I know what it's like to lose somebody close. I know what that feels like. And you're still trying to see, you're still so real, it's surreal. You're still trying to figure out if this is really happening." I said, "But I had a lot of questions, and I didn't know when they were going to be answered, but I thought I knew God." And God told me at that moment, I went into autopilot. I was sitting down, and he said, this is the book that he gave me during journaling, and he said, "There are some things that you experienced in a relationship with me at the time that were suitable for that season. There was a foundation that was laid, a relationship that was created, and things that were built on that." He said, "But that was good for then. But I had to break the foundation in order to restore you and to renew you and to repurpose and refine you." And they were like, and he's like, "I didn't, I didn't do this on purpose, but there was a purpose in this. There was a purpose that you had to experience that in this pain in order for me to renew you." And so I wrote this down that day, and I was like, where do I begin? Was the first thing I wrote, because I didn't know what to write. And it says, "My son, I'll explain the purpose behind your brokenness. You were broken down to your foundation. I even broke your foundation. My purpose was to renew, pour, refine, and in doing so, restore you." And I wrote that down. He said, "God." And I didn't write in this for years after that. And then I just was like still trying to pick up pieces. I was still trying to do it out of my own strength instead of letting God show me.
Right.
it wasn't until after the separation and the divorce started that I was like, okay, God, what do you have to say? I remember when it happened. The next day, I went in my living room. I said, I'm here. Here I am. What do you want from me? Whatever you say, I'll do. I'll do it. And I just started surrendering and just praying and saying, show me. Show me exactly what I need to do. Show me where I need to be, and I'll do it. And I started looking at things, and that was then he started saying, I need you to see your life from my perspective through the lens of grace. And that's when he started telling me all those things. He showed me all those things. Yeah, that happened. But that's when he told me it was neither negative nor positive. It was necessary because you were getting to know me. I showed you me in those times. On the times that because I was looking at, this happened when I was 8. This happened when I was 13. This happened here. I was looking at all the negative things, but he was like, who was I during that time? I was a friend. Every time he showed me something, I saw something negative, he showed me who he was in that time. Right. I was experiencing Yahweh. I am. I was experiencing God in those broken moments where he was the mender of a broken heart. He was my comforter, my counselor. All those things became apparent, but it wasn't until I reached the end of my rope. That's where he began. And it changed my perspective on everything. I stopped crying about woe is me, look what they did with that. I stopped. And I started literally praying for my ex. I started praying for people. I started seeking God. And my prayer changed. I think we talked about this earlier. I stopped worrying. My prayers became verbal cries of worry. And God, don't let this happen. Do this for me. Do that. And it started to be a reflection of a relationship with him. I started to seek him. I started to spend time in his presence. I started to worship. And my prayers changed into prayers of faith and boldness. Like, okay, God, I know you're going to do this for me. You're going to turn this around for me. I'm not focused on that. I'm not here to worship and praise you for that. I'm here to get in your presence, to know you, right, and to be known by you. And so that's what I was looking for. I wanted to know God. I wanted to know everything because my identity was lost in all those relationships because I didn't know who I was. I thought my identity in a relationship was making them happy. That made me happy. Mm-hmm. I didn't know. And then when you go through a negative thing in a relationship and you have people telling you what you're not, and you're going back and forth, calling each other out of each your name, that starts to stick.
They start to put labels on you of who they see you as, and you sometimes take those labels on.
And so that happened. And that led me to write the importance of a father's voice in a son's life. And we talked about this earlier about just Old Testament fathers. When they spoke a blessing on their son or their child, they put the right hand on the son, and they spoke the inheritance blessing and the blessing over their life. They said, blessed will you be in this and that. They spoke that blessing. And that's what I yearned for, was a father to help me identify who I was, teach me about the difference between love and tolerance, acceptance and rejection, to teach me how to find my identity in Christ instead of in relationships. But I didn't have that mentorship.
Okay. Man, you know, if I don't say this, and it's funny, I keep sitting here and I'm like, no, God, I'll talk to him about that later on after this episode. But like, no, it's the more you talk, the more it's screaming. And this is your story, so nobody knows your story better than you know it. But in everything from your childhood to the losing of your brother to the relationships that have happened to the loss of your daughter, the one thing that screams, and you've probably heard this, is that in all of that, my question to you is, have you at any point stopped to grieve, starting from the beginning? Because even when you just shared with what you wanted from your dad, and I say all this because my story is very similar to yours, in that there have been things that I wish looked a certain way. There have been relationships that I wished worked out better. There have been situations that died that I wish would have looked the way my expectations had set them. And so as I go through life, as I look back at a lot of those things, and I wish they would have looked better. I wish he would have been a better father. I wish that I could have been a better dad. I wished. I hold on to all that stuff, and it turns into like regret. And then it turns into bitterness.
Yeah.
And it took me sitting with God, recognizing what I wish, and then grieving those situations as if just like you do when a person dies. Ooh. But in most cases, when people die, you hit it on the head when you said, when my brother died, there was nothing for me to stay there for. So I ran. Mm-hmm. When this didn't happen, I moved away. When this didn't work out, I moved there. We spent a lot of times running from the things that we're supposed to look at and grieve, what we expected it to look like. And when we don't do that, we carry it all with us.
Yeah. And that's what made that's where a lot of the brokenness started to be exposed in the relationships, and I didn't know how to deal with it. I had to come to terms with that when I started to do counseling, and he started to just peel back layers and talk about certain situations. And he was like, this is where that came from. This is where this started. Mm-hmm. And I was like, whoa. And the thing that was crazy is that I had 3 different partners married to. They almost all had the same hurts.
Yeah, because once again, we're not just attracted to partners that help us, partners as far as mates or people the opposite sex. We're attracted to friends that have the same exact hurt, because now we have a group of us that basically nurse each other's hurt. I'm not doing it. You're not doing it. We're not doing it. It allows us to find a safety and a comfort of people who are not doing the work, so we can all nurse each other's brokenness.
And that's dangerous to date your nurse, because when one of you guys get better, somebody's getting left. When you start dating the person that you find healing through, you connect on some pain, right? You connect with some similar pain. And through that relationship, you start to experience a little bit of what you think is healing, but you start dealing with some things. It's dangerous to date your nurse.
I don't think we find healing though. I think we find something that takes our mind off of it. Yeah. It's a comfortable thing. Earlier you said, it's like when you get married, there's a different light. It's that light that the doctors grab down when they're doing surgery. That light shines a light on all of our insecurities, all of our brokenness, all of the things that we've lost. And it shines a light to where the other person sees it. Yeah. You realize they see it. So you keep trying to hide it more. We keep trying to hide that stuff. And so we're trying to have a relationship with our coat covered. We're keeping the lights off all the time. We don't want the light to come on. Nope. And so we just keep hiding it. And we hope that, okay, well, like, let's go on a trip. I love how people, we just go on a trip. Like
I'm telling you,
we go on
my
trips.
My social media was tripping every time we would cruise.
Yeah.
We would go places and we would do stuff, and it would look like the highlight, but we got back home and I was the loneliest.
Now I'm back to face myself.
I was lonely in the marriage. I didn't even know how to do that.
Okay, so
I was lonely. I was like, I didn't know how to communicate with her. And it was just a lot of, we had so many fractures. And Bishop Jakes was talking about that at the last leadership conference. Him and his wife was talking about marriage. He said, how dare you leave me when I'm hurt and broken, as if you're not broken too. How dare you do this and turn your back on me in a vulnerable place?
But people leave each other. Okay, so hold on.
Yeah.
But people leave each other because the problem is you keep triggering her hurt. She keep and vice versa. So the thing is that it goes both ways in that relationships have a way of forcing you to heal with that person or split from that person. And if you're not going to heal, even if it's just one of you, if one of you goes on that journey to heal things, then even their responses to your denial or your block, they start to respond different to where you're like, oh, I was expecting you to, okay. And that's why they say, when you start to heal, it's less about how your partner reacts and more about how you react and how you move. And so when you start to move different, it catches them off guard. Like,
it does.
Wait a minute. Okay. In the past, you'd always do something really petty, or you'd say something really,
they almost
really
do
mean.
something to see if you're going to respond the same. And they're like, well, I can't get it that way. And my thing is, you talked about, did you ever allow yourself time to grieve and to get over it? The last 3 years.
Well, not get over it. Hold on, I don't want to put grieve and get over it. Yeah, just grieve.
I grieved, and I allowed God to really get into it. I left it uncovered, and I told you earlier. I was like, I think we had probably the meat of our conversation before we even came up and did this. It was that's when I started to really experience a peace with allowing what God was doing in my life, and I wasn't trying to go out there and vindicate myself. I said earlier, I wasn't interested in trying to prove who I was to people who once knew me when I was married. I wasn't trying to rebuff any of the things you might have heard, and because God had literally started to help me, restore me, and help identify me. He started to tell me who I was. My worship and my relationship with him became me at times just sitting in his presence and him telling me, this is what I think of you. Mm-hmm. This is what I said to you. This, when we talked about earlier, I said, my worship started being about me worshiping God and singing songs to him, to him telling me, I'm singing over you.
Right.
I'm rejoicing over you. This is how I see you.
Right.
The first act of worship that was ever recorded in the Bible, people don't realize, is after the creation, when God would come down in the cool of the day to fellowship with man.
Right.
Why he rested on the seventh day? It's because during that time, after he created everything that man would need to be able to survive before he created man. Mm-hmm. Even before he created stuff, before he created trees, he made water, right? Mm-hmm. They need to be able to sustain.
Right.
So when he created everything and then he created man, he wanted man to sit back on the Sabbath and not work, just sit with him and chill and reflect on, look at all this stuff. Look at the goodness. Let's talk. Adam, where are you? You ever realize when God talked to man in every part of the Bible, the response was, here I am?
Right.
There was a reason. He was like, my last worship.
Well, God is something else. I can't wait. Man, you set me up with the super alley. So I want you to go so I can be like, woo.
Friday, I was faced with a lot. I'm faced with some personal stuff where I'm believing God to change and work out in my life, because this divorce took me through the ringer financially, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. And I'm like, God, I trust you with that. I left that alone. Have been receiving so much confirmation. Same thing I've experienced all my life. I had people off the worship team look at me and say, I see you every Sunday worship like you, the only one in here. And that does something when I'm up here singing. And I said that because I sat on Saturday morning. I didn't know what to do. And all I could say is, here I am. Here I am. Here I am, God. And I just sat, and that song from Tekoa came on, just to know you and to be known by you. And God was like, you know everything about me, but let me tell you what I know about you. And that's when the Holy Spirit showed me Zephaniah 3:17. I will sing over you and rejoice over you. I'm your God. I'm mighty to save. I will rejoice over you with song. And he started bringing all these scriptures back to me. And that's what made me think about a father's voice and about God resting. I said, God, if you could, but place your right hand on me and bless me. You know?
Yeah.
And that the father's voice gives the son his identity, gives the son his purpose. What God taught me in these last 3 years about relationship, he said, when you enter into a relationship, if it doesn't mimic this, what you have with me, I need you to understand is you need to consider what it is. A relationship will always bring you to his presence, push you to his purpose, and give you peace. That's what he told me.
Mm-hmm.
If it doesn't push you in my presence, give you purpose, reveal my purpose for your life, first off,
Mm-hmm.
and give you peace, consider what you're getting into. Because even individually and collectively, God has created us all for a purpose.
But I'll say this, though.
Mm-hmm.
Peace doesn't always look like peacefulness.
Mm-mm.
It's the peace you find in the midst of the craziness to go on. A lot of people are quick to run from people because they feel like, man, you're not peaceful. Man, you're always wanting to argue. Man, you're all. And the truth of the matter is that you're looking for another person to be peaceful, and you're not looking for God's peace in the midst of the storm that they're bringing to you. And you said something. I'm gonna, because I have to hit this whole thing. You even said something earlier about how, man, Adam was used to convening with God in the garden. Mm-hmm. And since God used to sit with Adam and Eve in the garden, they used to spend time. Since then, we've been looking to convene with God. And because we don't feel like his presence is as close as that relationship that we can pick up in our lives, or that person that we can go and touch, we would much rather go and have a person sit next to us and put a person in our life instead of sit in his presence, just because we can't physically touch him. We're looking for a physical touch. So we're finding a substitution for him and somebody else that can physically touch us and make us feel good momentarily, or bring us momentary peace, when he has a peace that's there, and he gives us that peace no matter what's going on. His presence and his love is far greater than any person that we can bring into our life. But we're so busy wanting that physical thing that Adam and Eve had, instead of looking for his physical presence that's not like that mother or father you had in your life, but that presence that's there even when everybody else is leaving, even when everybody else is butting heads, even when everybody else is not happy. Well, right now I'm not happy, so I'm gone. But when God's not happy, he's not leaving. A lot of people think that when God's not happy, well, his presence leaves you. But the thing is God's still there even when you're not happy with yourself, even when you think he's not happy with you, he's still there. He never left. He never walked away from us. It's just that we're so quick to look for a second best. We're looking for something that we believe would be like that, instead of looking to him. And so I say all that to say that in all of this, brother, I can recognize that, man, this is heavy, because I've been in that same exact spot, and I can't end this episode without. Normally, I'm used to people coming on and they're sharing their stories of things and testimonies that they've been through. And I don't have a lot of people, if any, that come on and talk about where they're currently sitting. And I can feel that heaviness even when you're explaining that, because what it tells you. I say this all the time, and I recognize this. When people live out a life that's on Front Stream, it's a reality show for everybody. So when it's good, they're watching. But when it goes bad, of course they want answers. Of course they want you to finish the story up. Oh, no, you can't go silent now. We want to know. But the truth is, it's none of their business. It never was. But a lot of times, in them calling you and them trying to ask questions, or in them trying to tell you what they heard about you, now they're telling you the rest of the story, and they're putting new labels on you. And it's heavy when those people know you, when they're friends, when they're close family members that are putting new labels on you. It becomes heavy, because it's one thing when people you don't know are telling you about you. It's another thing when people who know you are telling you how it looks. Man, what are you? And it's like, yo, I don't have it to wear these labels right now.
It was heavy because it was so overwhelming, and I was still trying to figure out and sift through all these things and my reality of everything. And I think my mom was more hurt than I was, because she retaliated and she said things and she did things. I was like, no, you're not helping. And she was like, you're my son. You don't understand. I was like, I understand. I have children, but I understand. I'm like, please, this is not how God wants me to respond. And I got to the point where I stopped fighting and surrendered. I surrendered. And I started praying. That bitterness was gone, and I started really praying. I'm like, God, please. I literally was talking the other day to a bunch of people, and I said, I thank God. When you can say, I thank God for what I've been through, because I wouldn't have never experienced him this way. I'm in a place where I've been praying to be spiritually and in a relationship with God that I've always wanted to be in life. But it took me, I can't look back and say, oh, look at this. If I could have just avoided this or did that. Yeah, I made decisions, but God's grace kept me. His grace was sufficient.
Right.
And you said so much in that, what you were saying.
Yeah, don't try to process it now. Just
it's hitting me.
Yeah. Well, look, brother, before we close out of here, brother, is it cool if we pray together, man? Because
that's fine.
I recognize that, like, there are times where I feel heavy, like, man, either well after, but like even right now, man, I recognize that even right now in your story, there are probably people that are going to listen to that who are in the exact same place, and they're probably feeling exactly how you feel, and you haven't even really spoke about how much, like, what you're feeling in your head, what you're beginning to tell yourself, how you're feeling about yourself. But I like I said, I've sat in that space before. So yeah, if we could just end this in prayer, bro, that would be great. All right, cool. Lord, I thank you for being able to speak through us today, Lord. I thank you for speaking through my brother and allowing his vulnerability to be a gift, not only to others, but to be a gift to you, Lord. I pray that in his vulnerability, as he offers things to you, as he surrenders things to you, Lord, you allow yourself, your presence to be known in his life in a way to where you begin to put the label of who he truly is to you, how you see him in his heart, Lord. Allow that to cover up and to wash out all the he say, the she say, all the things that are going around and swirling around right now that are trying to begin to put labels on him and tell him who he is, Lord. I pray that right now, as he continues to seek you, Lord, you comfort him right now. You allow your presence to continue to be able to be the thing that he seeks for those areas of his life that can only be nursed by you, Lord. Allow those hurts, those pains, those things that he's been carrying for a long time, Lord. Lord, I know that you can make sense of those things in a way to where you might not be able to answer them for him, but you'll allow him to experience your peace in the midst of it all while he grieves these things, Lord. So I pray that you continue to work in his life, because, Lord, that calling on his life has never gone away. That calling is still on his life. That calling is still there. What you're going to do in his life and how you're going to work in his life is still, you're still working that in. That plan has not gone anywhere, Lord. You still have a great plan for his life. His story, his vulnerability today is going to touch lives, but the way you're going to continue to touch his life to be able to be a blessing, not only for him, but to others, Lord, is going to be a story that he's going to come back and share one day. And we're going to see your glory, not only now, but even in the future, of how you're continuing to work in his story, Lord. So we thank you. We give you the praise and the glory, Lord, because we know that you are a God, not of the present, but also the future. You already sit in our future. You were sitting in our past, Lord. You knew exactly what we went through, and those things that you use to be able to continue to shift us, Lord, are the same things that they're going to bring us out to where we give you the glory for it. And we look back and we say, I can't believe that in all of that, this is where I sit now. Mm-hmm. So thank you, Lord. You, we thank you.
Thank you, Father.
In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Brother, I appreciate you coming and sitting down today, man. This was a blessing.
Thank you.
It's crazy how when I can just sit and truly listen, I not only I get a word, but I also it also helps me in areas where I have kind of like just turned from those things and been like, yeah, no, I mean, I'll be fine. But I'm recognizing that not only was that word for you, but that word in a lot of areas was for me, because I find myself still grieving things, because I've learned that grief is not something that you like. It's a one-time thing. It's something that even in moments where you're triggered, you find yourself grieving things that you thought you had gotten through. So I would tell you, man, like, understand that grief it's not like a season. It could be a lifetime, but sometimes it's the fact that we do grieve, so we don't have to forever hold on to those things that are keeping us running. Yeah. So, brother, I appreciate you. I appreciate you coming today, man. This is a blessing, man. I
definitely would like to come on a different note, but I do want to just explain the processes of things and just who God has been. So that's, I just felt like we didn't go into it, but we shared enough. But you helped me process a lot, because most of the time I'm sitting here and processing and listening to you and thinking like, you have so much, I have so much I wake up with, and I'm thinking out throughout the day, and I'm combating that all day, like casting down reasonings and imaginations and not trying to be triggered by something that hasn't even happened. And sometimes I get caught up in the thought
all the way out in the future,
and I'm responding to that now, and I'm like, that hasn't happened, and I'm walking around it tense and everything. So this gave me a release and a peace. So
I'll tell you for that. Yes, sir. And God, I love how God used to tell me, stay in the present with me.
Yeah.
Stay in the present with me.
That's what he tells me.
I'm right here. Day. Stay in the present with me. You can jump out there and you can start to experience the anxiety of that, or you can stay in the present with me.
I will rejoice and be glad.
Right. Because what he wants you to recognize is the miracles he's going to do right here in the present with you.
Yeah.
The future is yet to be seen. He's got a plan for you. He's already there. But what he wants you to experience is right now, what's right here in the future, or right here in the present. I'm sorry. So stay in the present with him.
I will.
Stay in the present with him. Well, cool. Well, hey, look, I appreciate you guys listening today. Thank you for hanging out with us. Man, I hope you felt like this was a safe space, because wow. Man, this was good all around. I look forward to catching up with you after this, man. But thank you all for listening. We'll talk to you guys again soon. All right, be blessed.
We appreciate you listening today and hope that if you enjoyed this episode, you'll like and subscribe, and also listen to past episodes. We hope to bring you great future content as well. Please comment your thoughts on this episode, as well as leave any prayer requests below so that this community can pray alongside you. Also, don't forget to follow us on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and Facebook at God's Glory and Men's Real Stories.
Brothers, we understand how the thoughts of even facing your own past and current story and the pain and hurt that come along with this is no easy task. But you're not alone, as you hear in these episodes. Nor has God forgotten you or left your side, as he's in it with you, fighting alongside you through the storms of life. He loves and has already forgiven you, no matter what you have done, and he wants a relationship with you. Your healing, freedom, and growth are important to God, and to us as well. Maybe you're considering giving up, or need someone to talk to. Here are a few resources that already exist that we hope can shine a light into that dark place you're in. The National Suicide Prevention Lifeline number is 1-800-273-8255. If you need support but are not in crisis, consider reaching out to a warm line with individuals who would love to talk with you. Speaking to someone on these calls is typically free and confidential, and run by people who understand what it's like to struggle in life. Find a local number by going to warmline.org.